Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Thursday. It's a special edition of the Seahawks Fan Table podcast.
Happy
Gentlemen,
Friday, everyone.
how's it going? Well, it's always special with you guys.
Always.
So
sweet.
Quick shout out to JG from the Northwest. Thanks for checking out the podcast and tweeting with us and chatting with us. So, if you don't know that guy, he's from Seahawks.net. So, one of the few people that have actually been checking us out. So, thank you for that.
Yeah, long time .netter.
But, gentlemen, it is our weekly podcast. We're the Seahawks Fan Table. I am Sam. With me is Zeb and Ross. And, gentlemen, really, really big win for Seattle this past Sunday on Sunday Night Football. Wouldn't you say?
Huge.
Business as usual.
Business as usual. I mean, Seahawks celebrate a huge win over the then number one team in the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles. Sam, myself, eats a ton of crow as I was the only one to predict a Seahawks loss, so thank you, Seahawks, for proving me wrong. The Seahawks played their most complete game of the year. Wilson and Wagner continued the MVP talk with a dominating performance on Sunday night. There's 4 games remaining. The ride is just beginning to start. Mike Davis is our running back Jesus, compiling 101 yards from scrimmage. So, Ross, you were questioned, and other people have rightfully questioned, hey, why is this guy all of a sudden going to be the savior? But I think you'd have to say, in the limited role that our running game plays, that was a pretty positive thing.
I mean, he definitely did. I just question whether, I don't want to be a jerk. I just even question now, whether, is Mike Davis really that much more awesome, or has the offensive line actually gotten better, with Brown in there? And I mean, it was a little ridiculous how much he was considered the Jesus of the running game after 6 carries for 18 yards. And also sad commentary that 60 carries for 18 yards can make him into a legend among our fans this season. But I mean, he had a good game. And I've written elsewhere that I'd continue riding that Mike Davis bus. But I think you kind of just said something that's important. I mean, it's a limited role. This isn't we're not saying he's Marshawn Lynch 2013 and we're just gonna ride Mike to the Super Bowl. He's a role player now, essentially. If you're a running back in Seattle today, you're a role player.
Yeah, I mean, Zeb, what do you think? I mean, if anything, we all saw that 22-yard run. I think it's probably the longest run from scrimmage. J.D. McKissick had I think it was a 21-yard run.
He had a 30-yard TD.
It was a 30-yard TD. It's the only Seahawks player not named Russell Wilson to score a touchdown on their own. But that run was pretty crazy. Zeb, what do you think when you saw Mike Davis play?
I mean, he honestly reminds me a lot of Rawls in 2015. They look real similar, their builds and kind of their running styles. I'm still hoping that we'll get Chris Carson back here at some point. I think if we make a playoff run going into the playoffs with those 2 guys healthy, I think that gives our offense a lot of help. Gives Russell a lot of help.
So I mentioned this earlier. This was the most complete game, and we'll talk about the crow that I was savoring all week long. But that wasn't a game that I think, not that I didn't think the Seahawks could play, but it wasn't a game the Seahawks had shown all year. What did you guys think in regards to that complete game?
Well, let's be honest. It was the most complete game this season, but it was kind of the only complete game they've put together this season. It wasn't a complete throttling. We didn't just kick the bejesus out of them, but we played solid and efficiently in all facets and didn't beat ourselves with penalties and stupid mistakes. So it was pretty much the first time this season that we've seen them put it together in all phases.
But I think we talked about it last week a little bit. You could sort of see. There's football's so complicated. You can see anything, I suppose, in anything. But I felt like it was kind of easy, not easy. It was possible to see it coming. I mean, we don't have Richard Sherman right now, but we have an array of sort of cornerback twos, right? I mean, you got 3 or 4 people who can legit play cornerback. So you're not too afraid of that. Cam Chancellor's not out there, but his backup, albeit go ahead and say it, I think is probably better in pass coverage, and it's a passing league right now. So he's not as good against the run. He never will be, McDougal, but he's probably better against the pass than Cam is really at this point in his career. And the running, we got Dwayne Brown back. We did have a semblance of a running back there, and Mike Davis. And Jimmy Graham's been on fire. I feel like you could kind of see all the little things kind of moving towards this the last few weeks. So I don't know. It's not purely just 2020 hindsight kind of thing, because I predicted a win, and some of the things I think I talked about and we talked about did come to fruition.
I think that's the thing, kind of like what you're saying, like it's the most complete game the Seahawks have played all year, but it's taking pieces from every game and saying, it's like, hey, this is what they need to do to put together a solid win. We talked about cutting mistakes. They limited their penalties. They had, I think, their lowest penalty output.
Yeah.
They had 6 and they had 5 this game. They were the beneficiary of penalties for once. They didn't get called on a couple plays. Obviously, the refs missed a couple calls going against both teams, but for the most part, Seahawks were not punished. They didn't give away yards. And against a team like the Eagles, especially the way that they've been playing this year, that only benefited them. But I think the thing that I found to be most surprising was Russell Wilson just continues to be just notches ahead of everyone else. And Bobby Wagner, the same thing. So this actually leads us into topic number 1. Topic number 1 for Ross. Is Wilson the MVP of the league? Is Bobby the defensive player of the year? So 2-part question. Ross, what do you think?
I don't think there's a choice. To be honest, I don't think there's another legit choice for number 1, most valuable player in the league. If you take away Russell Wilson and put in Austin Davis, what would our record be? For me, number 2 out there is probably Brady. But if Brady, for example, this season had been injured game 1 and they had to play Garoppolo, do we really think the Patriots would miss the playoffs? I don't. Not to say Tom Brady, of course, of all people, is some sort of system quarterback. He's amazing. He's great. I don't love the Patriots, but I admire what they've done. I admire what he's done. But Russell Wilson's 85% of our offense right now, literally. He's the leading rusher. He's the one who makes up for the deficiencies in some route running, deficiencies earlier, especially in the pass protection. And even last game, first play they ran was a read option that he can execute, and that, in my opinion, is also what loosened up a little bit of the running game. I've been clamoring for him to do proper read options all year long, because even in the Marshawn Lynch days, everybody seems to forget this stuff. They had the coaches out there saying, doing the statistical analysis, Russell Wilson being able to do his read options adds another half yard to Marshawn Lynch's carries on average. So I don't know. I don't know how you can argue anybody else except for Russell Wilson as the most valuable player in the NFL this year.
Well, he's too short.
He's too short. He won't win because we're not going to, I don't know, maybe we don't get as far as we're supposed to, or he's too short. He doesn't quite look the part. He has this manufactured image that early on served him really, really well, but now is starting to hold him back, because now people are starting to clamor for more. After 5 years of robot Wilson, people want more of a deeper look into who he really is, and they're not going to ever get it. And he plays in Seattle, and unfortunately that counts.
All right. What about Bobby Wagner as Defensive Player of the Year?
When he's got some of the big plays and he made them when he needed to step up, that's a harder one, because there's so many ways to look at that. And the Seahawks don't really have I think the theme in the media this year is that the Seahawks defense isn't what it was. And so if you're the best player on the defense, but you're at the same time saying the defense isn't what it once was, I doubt. He's definitely in the running, isn't he? He's made all kinds of big plays. He's got the sacks. He's got
touchdowns. He's got touchdowns.
Yeah. He'll be in the running. I think it's. I feel like especially defensive player of the year, you really have to make like a lot of like super splash ESPN kind of highlight plays, and he's made a couple. Obviously, this last game he made another one. I just also again, this shouldn't Canada, but it sort of does. I think charisma kind of matters as well, and Bobby Wagner's a cool guy, but he's not like super charismatic, is he? So I don't think he sticks in people's minds. So I think when it comes to voting, he'll suffer for personality. He'll suffer for playing where he does. So I doubt either of them get it.
All right. Well, Zeb, what about you? What's your take on?
But I think, especially at least there, Wilson should win it. Wagner should be in the top 5. You know, in the discussion.
Well, I think they're both pretty clearly the MVPs on our team, and I think you could make a good argument that they're as valuable to our team as any other player is in the league to their team. But the way the voting works with the media and everything, I do believe they'll probably both finish top 3, but I don't see either of them actually winning the awards just based on how things tend to go. A lot of those guys have probably already cast their votes. If we have some magic down here, the final stretch of the season, it's not even going to count for a lot of those guys. So, but I think they're both worthy and they're both deserving. And I think even a top 3 finish is respectable and reasonable. There's some really good players in this league. What Brady's doing at 40 years old is pretty impressive. Like there's not really much arguments you can make against that. What guys like Jalen Ramsey and Calais Campbell have done this season is worthy of league-wide recognition. So I'll be disappointed if at least one of them doesn't win, but it won't surprise me. And I think they're both good enough to be in the discussion and to be top 3 finalists.
I think it always says something when you have 2 key players on the offensive or defensive side really kind of sticking out, not only from a local perspective, but even national. Because a lot of local people before the Sunday night game were saying, like, people aren't talking about Russell Wilson, people aren't talking about Bobby Wagner. But if they have a great game on Sunday night, they're going to put themselves in a great position where people are going to be forced to talk about them because it's such a huge stage. And, you know, you look at Russell Wilson's stats, 227 yards and 3 touchdowns. Doesn't look that amazing, but when it's against the number 1 team and a top 10 defense, those really stick out. When Bobby Wagner leads the defense in tackles and has 4 or 5 huge tackles for loss in that game, he sticks out. Now, to your guys' point, it is hard because, one, it's the Seattle market. Even though Seattle has been as popular as it has been over the past 6 years, it's still not the same. Now, one of the things that is interesting about the MVP award is that there's not a lot of repeat. There's not a lot of people that win it again and again. Peyton Manning and Brett Favre are kind of the exception of people that have won the award multiple times, and that's been kind of a rarity. Russell Wilson, I think, is definitely in the category, and if they go undefeated, he's going to run away with it because he's going to be top 3 in touchdowns, not only just passing but rushing as well. He'll be leading the team in rushing yards because he has twice as many yards as the next closest guy. I think it's still Chris Carson is the second most, rushing yards on the team. So that in itself is going to put him in this really unique situation. And I think the NFL is a little bit more progressive when it comes to who wins these awards, because it's not always about like, oh, who wins this award and who's going to be remembered for it. It's like, hey, in a moment, who's gonna win this award and who would really, really, kind of make some press if we give it to them. Because you can't explain how Tom Brady doesn't win this award every year, or why guys like Bill Belichick doesn't win Coach of the Year every year. Those kind of things, that's something that I think the NFL voting audience does. They don't like to go back to the well again and again. When it comes to Bobby, he plays the middle linebacker's position, so he's a little bit of a disadvantage because leading the league in tackles is the most unsexy thing ever. But here's a really great stat that I heard, is that he has not missed a tackle this year. And from his position, That's insane. Quick shout out to JG. He said that the Seahawks are undefeated since the Fuck Yeah Wilson game. I believe that was San Francisco. So it's a great point because they've played really well since that time. Is there anything you think of before we move on? If the Seahawks go undefeated, if they go 12-4, what prevents either one of them from winning that award? Does someone have to have a better year, or does it mean that they're just not getting the recognition? Real quick.
I mean, Russell Wilson has to overcome, to build Russell Wilson's resume, you have to include, in my opinion, the rushing yards. But a lot of people don't like to include it. There's well, that means he's an athletic quarterback, and that's not really playing the quarterback position how it's meant to be played. There's a lot of bias against athletic type, running type quarterbacks. So I think he has to overcome that. I mean, you're winning it because you're also your team's running game, and a lot of people just don't respect that. There's still that image back. You have to fight preconceived notions that you can't just be a drop back quarterback, and that's just a lot to overcome. And you also have to overcome flat out the record. Even at 12-4, you have to see it. I mean, if the Eagles end up with one more win and Wentz has more touchdown throws, I mean, it's hard to argue. I mean, it's all decide. What you want to value. Bobby Wagner. I mean, again, the most obvious stat is his number of tackles, but I hate to say it, but that's partially a product of sort of who you play behind and your system scheme. Some teams run schemes where the middle linebacker isn't meant to be the vacuum cleaner. So
yeah, but he is a pretty good vacuum cleaner.
I'm not saying he's not. I mean, like I said, I'd put him in top 3. I'd probably vote for him, but especially defense, man, it's a very, very vague thing. You have to get every voter to kind of decide that that's on what they're going to value, and it's got to be the thing that the category, the value that what emphasizes your candidate, right? If somebody's looking for a linebacker who, has more interceptions or has more sacks, they're going to be able to find them.
Yeah.
So
what about you? Do you see anything that would prevent them from getting these awards if they go 12-4?
I think there's a lot of old school NFL media guys who, unless somebody on a team like the Seahawks is just clearly running away with it, they don't acknowledge it. You know what I mean? They're gonna go for somebody in one of the big old school markets, one of the the Giants or the Patriots or the teams that the media guys just love to gush over. So if it's close, then I don't think there's much of a chance for somebody in Seattle to win it. And at this point, because of the way guys like Brady have played, it's going to be close. There's no kind of way around it, and I think just that media edge makes it unlikely.
Crackback 80 chats and he says Russ is going to need a lot of flashy plays and TDs. So he's, I think, tied for second with total touchdowns. He doesn't have the passing yardage because he's kind of dropped off a little bit. But those rushing yards,
he's thrown the most passes.
Yeah, he's thrown the most passes, and he's actually been super efficient with those passes too. I'm willing to be a little bit more optimistic. If the Seahawks win these next 4 games, we're talking about at the Jaguars, home against the Rams, at Dallas, and home against the Cardinals. While 2 of those teams are not going to make the playoffs, wins against the Jags, wins against the Rams would be huge. And I think that's something that will be really big and that will really stick out because it's a lot about what do you do towards the end of the season, which is really going to help solidify where they are. But moving forward, let's go on to topic number 2. So, Zeb, I'm going to hit you off first with this one. So, John Schneider's offseason was on full display this past game. Do fans give him enough credit? And I ask that because, we know that the Seahawks have a unique front office with Pete Carroll being the executive vice president and John Schneider being the GM. Are those lines a little bit blurred, and does the credit get a little bit watered down sometimes?
I think there's a certain type of fan that gives him enough credit, like maybe the kind of guy who sits on a Seahawks message board or a chat room all day talking about that kind of stuff. I think the average fan probably doesn't recognize the kind of job he's done over the years, and then in this year specifically. So yeah, he probably doesn't get the credit he deserves. But I mean, how often does a GM really, by the fans, get the credit they deserve?
Jerry Jones gets all the credit.
Yeah.
Daniel Snyder gets all the credit and the blame.
Yeah, those guys are more than GMs, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
Those guys are the faces of their franchise, no matter who the players are.
It's quite a feat to do that.
It is. I don't know. I think
you have to inherit enough money.
Yeah. This particular offseason, after a couple where things maybe didn't look as well as they had in the past, the drafts didn't go as well necessarily. This past offseason has been a real reminder of the kind of job that John Schneider is capable of doing, and Pete Carroll too. Really, obviously, he's a big part of it. So, I think guys like us, we recognize what John Schneider has done, and we give him all the credit in the world. I think it's a lot to ask of the average casual fan to do that, but so yeah. Overall, he probably doesn't get enough credit.
All right, Ross, what about you? What do you think?
I mean, I mostly agree with what Zeb says. I mean, if you walk around CenturyLink on game day and asked the fans, like, what's the name of the Seahawks general manager? Honestly, I think you'd probably get less than 50% correct. Probably those 25. I'm guessing now, but I don't think the average fan in that stadium even, and those are like, those are season ticket holders. I don't think they actually know. The guy who sits next to me, he does. So, but like, I don't think most of them do. So I mean, if the question is just flat out like, do fans give John Schneider enough credit? No. I mean, fans mostly, and it's not a knock on them. I mean, everybody's got a busy life. Everybody has to decide how much of the energy of their daily life they want to put into a sports fan kind of thing, right? So, but John Schneider does not get the credit he deserves from the fans, and that's a little bit of a shame. But more than that, I think from the people who matter, really. I mean, how does John Schneider not have a front office, what do they call it, GM of
Executive of the year?
Executive of the year. How does he not have one? I don't.
Just like Pete Carroll doesn't have a Coach of the Year, but Bruce Arians and Ron Rivera are both 2-time Coaches of the Year.
Ridiculous.
Bruce Arians. I mean, so but I think, like you said, to certain fans he does, and to me, I think he gets the exact sort of level of respect from the right, from certain kind of fans that deserves. I mean, as of late, there's been some doubt, and I don't think that's a bad thing because the draft hasn't been as awesome as it was at the peak, and there's been some high visibility mistakes along the way. But when he gets things right, I think it's really obvious. I mean, even now, you said like what he's done this past offseason and even sort of mid-season, like a lot of adjustments on the fly that are awesome. But I brought this up a few weeks ago. I'm a little bit worried about some of these things that kind of cut into our salary cap down the road. And now we find out, 2 weeks ago we got rid of Freeney because literally we can't afford him.
Yeah,
so,
that's also why Cam's still on the active roster. He can't play, he can't practice, but they can't sign anyone.
I mean, like you could put him on injured reserve, but not sign somebody new. So that's kind of the reason. But I think that they're sort of hope that, like on the 10th opinion, some dude tells Cam Johnson, "Yeah, just go out there, man. Just go." Because literally they could just put him on IR and not sign another person. Also, I could be mistaken this, but once upon a time I remember thinking that the bottom 5 salaries of your roster don't count or something. It's sort of like a drop. I can't remember the vague.
Something like that. It might be 3.
And so you could probably sign just some UDFA to a minimum contract just to put somebody on the just have somebody run down the kickoffs.
Yeah,
I think there's something like that, and Zeb's remembering too. So I think there's something to that. So that can't be the whole reason they're not doing it. But in any case, I still think John Schneider is the best. I mean, I'm so proud. I just feel like the Seahawks right now. I'm so proud of them and so happy to have them because I feel like they match me as a person, even if that makes any sense. I mean, like they are open-minded, they are progressive, and they are They're not stuck in the ways, but they also they use a certain amount of science, but they also use a certain amount of like humanity making the decisions, and I love it. I sometimes worry they're a bit too sentimental, and I think John Schneider's a bit too eager to play around with his first round picks. But overall, he gets a lot of credit. He doesn't get enough, and I probably don't appreciate him as much because they've done the two levels of things. It was like rebuild a team, which is really hard, and then you have to completely switch gears in motion and kind of go, okay, now we're sort of like a second generation of this good team, and who are we going to keep and who we're not going to keep, and managing the cap at that point gets even more difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah,
you actually have players who earn it.
I think that's always going to be the issue with the GM, and even to a coach degree. You're never going to get enough credit in the moment. It's always going to be something that you are a couple seasons away from where we are. Crackback 80, he chimes in and says, yes, we're in the golden Seahawk years right now. And when you're in that high, when you're in that moment, it is incredibly hard to acknowledge and appreciate because you always want more. We haven't been to the Super Bowl.
Become entitled.
We haven't been to the Super Bowl in 3 years, and that's too long. Like, that's too long all of a sudden. It's like, I remember, Ross, when we first became friends, it's like, oh yeah, it'd be nice if the Seahawks could win a playoff game. Like, we were around when there was that stretch where they played the Rams 3 times in 1 year, and they lost 3 times. I was on the south end zone when that flail of a pass from Hasselbeck just kind of fell through Bobby Ingram's arm, and that's a tough pill to swallow. But you look at where we are now, and the sustainability. It's not just like, oh, the Seahawks are great for 1 year, and now we're kind of middle around. No, they've been really good. They've been a top 5 team for we're going on our 6th year here. Yes, it hasn't been perfect. There've been a lot of tribulations, but this year specifically, and it's always easy, and this is one of the things I hate about sports, is you always appreciate now more than what you had before. And I think now, the way that he's built the roster, as you pointed out, it's costing us draft picks, but the way that this roster is built, it's caused a lot of deficiencies to kind of get repaired or get better or get healed. Losing a Richard Sherman last year would have been terrible. Deshaun Shedd, Jeremy Lane as their 2 starting quarterbacks, we couldn't recover. I mean, we saw what happened when we lost, Earl Thomas and we were running out Steve Terrell. Signing a Bradley McDougall, drafting a Frank Clark, a Nazir Jones, a Jaron Reed, getting a Sheldon Richardson. All these moves that they've made specifically in this year have just been huge. Dwayne Brown in the middle of the season. We haven't seen a move like this since Marshawn Lynch, and that was franchise changing. These are multiple moves happening in one offseason and regular season. It's quite remarkable. And I don't think we'll really fully understand how great that is for years to come. And I think that's also what's difficult is the relationship between John Schneider and Pete Carroll is so close, it's sometimes hard to differentiate. But I think during the regular season, during the football year, I can't imagine Pete Carroll is running around trying to make trades for players. He's running after, guys like Jimmy Graham saying, whatever rumors you hear about trading you, we're not trading you. I think he's more concerned about the players and not necessarily the personnel or acquiring those guys.
I sort of have the feeling that he was in John Schneider's ear constantly about dude, especially after week 2 or 3 when things weren't getting better. I think it was constantly in John Schneider's ear, in my opinion. We need a lineman. We need a lineman.
I think that's totally possible. But he's not the one that's deciding who they're going after. He's just saying this is what we need.
He trusts John to do his job, and John. I think we were talking a second ago how Pete Carroll hasn't coach of the year and Schneider didn't win executive award. I kind of feel like what you're talking about is a big factor. I don't think people know the difference between where does John Schneider end and where does Pete Carroll begin and vice versa. And I think they kind of hurt each other that way.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely a possibility. Speaking of which, let's go to topic number 3. So we're on the Homer Corner, and now we're talking about ourselves. We're talking about our mistakes. What is the biggest thing you've predicted wrong about the Seahawks? And this doesn't have to be limited to this year or whenever. But, Ross, what's your biggest prediction that you've gotten wrong?
The list is long, and unfortunately I have a witness right here in you to talk about some of them. I don't know, man. So many. Do you want a really general one, or do you want to be just pretty specific?
Give me something to entertain us.
I was dead wrong on Pete Carroll. That was the big one. Like in my theory, looking at how the NFL works, I have this idea that in reality there are only at any one time 5 or 6 people who can coach a team that will actually get into the Super Bowl, who have every single segment of it right. They have the right kind of game plans. They have the right kind of personnel management. They have the right kind of motivation. You have to wear many, many hats to be. That's why so many coordinators don't make it as head coach, right? To be the head coach, you have to have so many hats you wear, and they all have to fit you really, really well. And so when they hired Pete Carroll, I was really, really unexcited, and I thought it was really unimaginative. And I thought, like, that's not one of the people who can get you the Super Bowl. He was I didn't think he was horrible, but I just thought, okay, he was a mediocre he was decent in the NFL. I said before, I think people like underestimate what he did before, but he was slightly above average as an NFL coach before, and then he was a really, really good, awesome college coach. But that was one of the times we was going through the sort of like the trend where not a lot of college coaches were coming in and doing well in the NFL, and I was like, this sucks, and I was slightly wrong. and then when he got into his specific things, his first year, I will say his first 2 years, man, because I still wasn't completely on board. I was, like, what do you do? Like Matt Flynn, come on, Matt Flynn has thrown 6 TDs in one game. Yeah, small sample size, but the list of people who have thrown 6 TDs in one game ever in NFL history is a really short list. And every other person on the list is like an awesome quarterback. So Matt Flynn is awesome. Screw that Wisconsin kid. I was a little wrong.
Hey, now to be fair, in that first training camp that we went to, we were pretty impressed with Russell Wilson. So,
well, that's true. But I was also impressed with Josh Bortles. Do you remember that? Josh Bortles was my man.
Well, you wanted him for the backup. You didn't want him starting, but.
Yeah, but I was kind of like in the back of my mind, kind of thinking, a couple of years there, he could. I have this fetish for undrafted quarterbacks to make it big time, like Zorn and Craig, and so I was like, that's going to continue the Seahawks tradition.
All right, Zed, what about you?
So I was wrong.
Oh, Zed, what about you? Do you have anything that is a big thing that you got wrong about your Seahawks?
I mean, I got a million things. Off the top of my head, though, my most recent one would be thinking that Rawls was going to basically come in and pick up where Marshawn Lynch left off, and that proved to be fallacy. At least at this point, he's not done yet, but it's not looking great for him.
He had a tough 4 yards in that one carry that he got. He hit 5 people on the way to the ground.
Exactly. I thought we weren't even going to miss Steve Hutchinson because we had a guy named Porkchop Womack who was going to step right in and be able to do the job. I remember particularly having an argument with a Steelers fan about Sean Alexander, and he was dead certain that his career was all but done after the Super Bowl year of 2005, and that he would never be the same guy again. And I was quite certain that he was wrong, and it turned out to be pretty much the truth. So plenty of mistakes over the years. I predicted the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl every season from 1988 till about 2012. Am I wrong?
So once they actually were going to win one, it's like, I'm done. No more. We're done.
Yes. I've been wrong about so many things. That's why I pretty much stopped making predictions, because I feel like every time I do, I'm just wrong.
Hey, don't listen to Zeb. We got a bunch of predictions. He's going to be right at the end of the show. Quick shout out again. Crackback80 says he was wrong about keeping Doug over Golden Tate. JG says that everyone was wrong about wanting to trade Jimmy Graham from week 4 and on before.
Dude, I was so mad when they first got Jimmy Graham. I did not want Jimmy.
Hey, man, he's killing it in the red zone this year. I think my biggest mistake that I've ever made, that I look in hindsight, is that defense wins championships. I didn't believe in that because we had this 2005 MVP Pro Bowl year. We had the best left side in the NFL that anyone had ever seen. We had a fullback that was blocking, and bulldozing people over. That was just something that I think kind of changed the way that I looked at football and kind of what makes me appreciate this Seahawks team a lot more. Yes, they are good offensively, but it's that defense that helps them stay in these games. That's something that I'm definitely traumatized by that Super Bowl against the Steelers, just because, one, we lost, two, the penalties were huge, but we played a terrible game, and we got punched in the mouth and we didn't recover. We got punched in the mouth by the refs, we didn't recover, and we just weren't. It made me think that we weren't mentally strong. We didn't have like the right resolve, because we were just kind of coasting. And that's kind of the way I look at a lot of these teams. Like last year I looked at the Cowboys and said, like, oh yeah, they remind me of the 2005 Seahawks. They probably won't even win their first game, and lo and behold, they didn't win against the Packers. That's something that I think I've been really wrong about, and it's changed the way that I look at football as a whole. How good's your defense? How good's your defense? Are you used to playing with the lead? I think it will change me long term, because what makes teams successful is kind of those core values. As good as any team has been, I can't recall any great team that's won a Super Bowl that has had a bad defense or a mediocre defense. You have to have a good plus defense in order to win a Super Bowl. And that's the biggest mistake I've made, because I always thought, oh yeah, just score more points. You could just throw over the top. You'll just run over them and it'll be no problem. But if you run a great defense, you're going to have problems. And I think we saw that with this Eagles team that was used to coasting, had the largest win differential between points scored and points given up. And they're used to playing with the lead. They're not used to trying to come back and win these smash mouth games that Seahawks like live and die from, as annoying as it is. And
yeah, when you run across, when they ran across our defense and had to throw you're setting yourself up for some bad times.
You know how many rushing attempts they had in the fourth quarter?
I do not know.
You're down 2 scores, but they ran 1 time in the fourth quarter.
That's probably not enough.
Yeah, right. But I think that's the biggest thing that I've been wrong about the Seahawks, because I was just in the fever of that 2005 team and like so into offense. I think that's kind of helped me change, and why I appreciate the defense, and why I appreciate this string of these players and the philosophy that this team has built up.
One more question, just since it was brought up, because it was sort of a debate at the time. Baldwin and Tate, where did you stand?
I was always why did we sign Percy Harvin? Golden Tate is cheaper and better. Not better, not better, but I would have liked to have had Golden Tate instead of Percy Harvin.
So you would have kept Tate and Baldwin and not ever had...
I wouldn't have traded for Percy Harvin. I thought he was redundant. I thought he was just like a Golden Tate plus, and I thought Golden Tate was great as is.
So if we look at the triangle of Baldwin, Tate, Harvin, where were you at, Zeb?
I was in the same boat as Sam. I didn't want... once we got Harvin, I was glad we had him, and I was excited to see what he could do, but I felt like we have Golden Tate. We don't need to bring in Percy Harvin. I thought it was unnecessary.
So I wanted to keep Tate. I wanted to get rid of Baldwin if I could only have one, and I was so excited to get Harvin. I have his jersey.
Ooh.
Oh my God. I've never worn it. I think it was you, Sam, who suggested I change the 11 to a 51 and change the Harvin to Irvin. I mean, I have Percy Harvin's jersey. I've literally never worn it. It just sits in the closet on the hanger, and I don't know what to do with it.
I have an Aaron Curry jersey that's in my closet I've never worn too, so,
That's
whatever.
actually worse. That's worse.
I have a Josh Brown jersey that I changed to Crown instead of Brown.
Slave to the businessman.
I'd have a hard time ever buying any Kicker's jersey, except for maybe Efren Herrera, because that's just sort of like...
hey, there are a lot of Hauschka jerseys. He's a very popular fellow.
You know what? I got a lot of compliments from ladies for the Josh Brown jersey. And when I went into the store, I went into the store to buy a jersey here in Portland, and it was like there was like 3 guys available, and I didn't want the same one everybody else had, so I bought Josh Brown.
Way to be an outsider, Zeb.
Well, there's only...
All right, let's move on to topic number 4. So we're going to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. So topic number 4, are you afraid of a Blake Bortles-led Jaguars? What about a Jalen Ramsey-led defense? Zeb, what's your thoughts?
I'm not afraid of anything involving Blake Bortles. it just doesn't register on my radar.
I think he's really good at beer pong. You should fear him at beer pong.
It's possible. I think that if we let somebody like Blake Bortles beat us, then that's entirely on us. Like, we did that to ourselves. Jalen Ramsey and the Jaguars defense is clearly a concern. I don't know. I'm definitely having mixed feelings about how I think this game's going to go, because just the team that we are, I could see us go down there and just giving them a beat down, and then I could see us go down there and shooting ourselves in the foot and just not being able or willing to make the adjustments needed to whatever they're throwing at us and blowing it. So I respect the Jaguars, and I think they have a legitimate shot at being one of the better defenses, even in like a grand scheme type of thing. Like, they're number one in like a ton of categories. If they finish the season number one in all these categories, it's the first team to do it since like the 70s, and you have to respect that. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think they're a little bit scary on the defensive side. I have no doubt that we have the guys that we need to stop that offense, stop Blake Bortles, and we should come out of there with a win.
Ross, what about you? What's your take on Blake Bortles? JG compares him to a first contract Alex Smith. Crackback80 says if Fournette gets loose, it equals bad news. What do you think about this offense and this defense we're going to face?
First of all, I don't know you're allowed to play college or beyond college if your name is Blake. So I'm pretty sure there's like some rules. Your name is Blake Bortles. Like, that's not even.
Hey, you know what?
Name.
Ross has an issue with names. He doesn't like Blair Walsh because Blair is not a football name.
Blair's the best the best character of Facts of Life.
True.
Well, or Tootie. It was kind of hard, but I don't know. Blake, names are important, man. You gotta have the right name. Blake Bortles is like a fraternity dude. Like, and probably he was, but I have a problem with his first and his last name, so I'm just not afraid of Blake Bortles because, like I said, he's probably better at beer pong than anything else. And for the life of me, I don't know why the Giants, like, with all the pieces they have in place, I don't know why they weren't like in the Garoppolo sweepstakes or one of the people trying to get like Romo or like I don't like how you like look at everything else you've got on your team and you look around and you go like, we're just gonna stand pat at quarterback with Blake. Come on, man. You got fans you're responsible to there. With any other quarterback, they're in the Super Bowl, aren't they? There's a chance. Jalen Ramsey is my favorite character in Game of Thrones, I think. I really like his actions at the castle last. Anyway, yeah, their defense is kind of scary. I do like our chances because when I watch their defense, they do so many good things right, but I think we sort of kind of have like the antidote for a lot of what they do. Like, they've got a lot of people who can get to the quarterback. You got somebody who can get to the quarterback, great. But I think they're over aggressive with it. I think we're going to see Russell Wilson pick up 50, 60 yards rushing. I don't think they can cover. If we come out like they have lately with 3 tight ends, Graham, Wilson, and Vanette. All 3 of those dudes are actually legit weapons, but they're also. It looks like a run-heavy package. I think that could cause problems for them, and I think we're okay, man. You want to take Jalen Ramsey and stick him with Baldwin all day long, fine, because Paul Richardson is underrated, and Lockett, who's going to catch up. I like the matchup. I think Blake Bortles is turnover-prone, and I don't really fear any of the receivers, and I think we've got a good core. Well, we're missing Richard Sherman. We have so much depth at cornerback. We have a whole bunch of CB2s, if you kind of switch the terminology. We don't have a wide receiver one, whatever, equivalent. So I like the matchup, man. I'm not afraid.
Yeah, a lot of people have been comparing this Jacksonville game to the Tampa Bay game last year. I think the biggest difference is we didn't have Earl Thomas last year, and I think that has proven to be a huge thing. You know, the replacement of Bradley McDougall has been huge. It's made huge dividends on our defense. But yeah, I think it is hard to be fearful of a Blake Bortles-led defense. Now, maybe a Leonard Fournette, if he really gets going, yeah, maybe you're a little bit concerned, but the Seahawks' run defense over the past 5 weeks has been incredible. They we'll talk about it in the stats, but they've done an amazing job. They had the number one rush offense to under 100 yards. None of their running backs had more than a 4-yard carry. I think they're all like 3.9 and 2.9 across the board. From an offensive side, I'm not afraid of a Blake Bortles-led Jaguars offense because I think our defense is just hitting its stride. They're just playing really well. A Jalen Ramsey-led defense, though, I think will be the big matchup, and I think that's where it gets really interesting. Not because necessarily of Jalen Ramsey, because I like our wide receiver matchups, because I think we do have not the weapons that people always talk about, but we have savvy guys that know how to get open with Russell Wilson, because this offensive line is going to get tested with a guy like Calais Campbell, who's leading, one of the top 3 guys in sacks. That's my biggest concern. I think we have a huge edge, our defense versus their offense. I'm concerned about our edge. It might be a push between their defense and our offense, though. So we'll see, because the thing that we seem to do in Florida games, it's been we've lost in Tampa, we've lost in Miami. I hope we can pull out a win in Jacksonville, but our record in Florida is not the best.
That's true.
Not to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm still, I'm still positive that we're gonna win. But I think that's really what's going to dictate, how this game's going to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
right.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, we got a couple updates here for you on the fantasy field. So for those of you that don't know, we have a fantasy podcast with the 3-Step Drop. Want to give a congratulations to Leor and Maddie of the 3-Step Drop for making the playoffs. They came in as the 2 and 3 seed. Laurel, Red Alice, Allison Horns, she came in first with the number 1 seed because her team's like full of Rams, and she's a big fan of that. So whatever, it's not going to last very long. So enjoy it while it lasts. And all 3 members of the Fan Table podcast, congratulations, gentlemen. We all made the playoffs. Congrats to Ross. You technically were I think you're the 4th seed. I'm the 5th seed, but I won the division because I had more wins within the division. And Zeb had like a 4-win streak, and he ended up getting the 6th place. So good on you. Ross, we're actually playing against each other this week, and Maddie and Zeb are playing against each other. Projections for our matchup is actually pretty even. So
really even.
Good luck, gentlemen. Ross already beat me this year twice in other leagues.
Playoffs, man.
Yeah, if I were more savvy, I would have picked up a kicker, because that would have given you no kicker, because apparently you didn't even realize your kicker wasn't playing until the last minute. So
literally like 12, 13 minutes before like the early game started, it's like, oh wait, my kicker's not playing today. He's on the IR.
Yeah, that's my bad for not paying attention.
I don't want to overstate things at all, but gentlemen, I was 3 and 6. Okay,
that was an amazing tear you went on,
and I'm in the playoffs.
You are the New York Giants of the playoffs.
I have shown so much resolve.
You never said quit. You never said die.
Not once.
You just hung in there, and you can't win until the 4th quarter, man.
It's funny that of my 3 leagues, I made the playoffs in all 3 of them. 2 of them, ours and the other one that matters. Same thing, 4-game win streak to make the playoffs.
That's what I did. I was in the league. I'm the commissioner. The pay league. I had to win 4 straight to get in, and I had to get in on the last play of the last game. Woo-hoo!
Shut it! I'm gonna mute you in a second.
Fantasy football.
And I knocked out 2 friends. I knocked out Tony and Sammy with that.
I'm gonna kick you in the shins or do something to you.
Have I told you how much I love fantasy football?
I think the conversation switched in the past 4 weeks, though.
I'm a huge fan.
All right, our fantasy question this week is JG, thanks for checking us out. Take it easy, man. He says hi to everyone.
Peace out, JG.
For the fantasy question is, do you have a Sacco in your league? So Sacco meaning a last place prize or punishment. You guys have any of those in any of the leagues that you guys play in?
I do not, but I'm in discussions to introduce one next year. But it'll be like a positive kind of thing. Like I want the last player, whoever comes in last, has to buy a Toys for Tots thing because that usually is right on Christmas. So
that's a very generous thing.
Well, that's good.
Zeb, what about
Tony
you? You have any punishments that you dole out?
I don't think any of my leagues have that sort of thing. No.
So, in the fantasy league that I've run, we've been playing this for 14 years now, so pretty strong group of guys. A couple years ago, my buddy Eric and Dustin decided that, you know what, we really need a Saka award. So they decided that whoever comes in last place has to cater our fantasy draft, and whoever comes second to last place has to buy drinks. Of course, that year, Eric and Dustin both came in last and second to last, respectively, and they catered our draft the next year. So that is a ongoing thing in the league that I run, which is fun because it makes it so that you're trying to pay attention all year. My team in that league is not so hot. I have to win my first playoff game, or win the second one. Otherwise, I'll probably be in the Sacco because my team is that bad. Yeah. Well, I lost my two best players like in the first 3 weeks, so I'd really had no shot. But what are you gonna do? All right, let's get into some predictions here. So predictions we have for the game. Obviously, we're gonna start with Ross. Final score. What's your prediction?
24-13.
Cap.
Seahawks, obviously.
God, I'm right there with you in some kind of similar.
Don't prices right me.
Situation.
Do not prices right me.
23-10. Well, sort of.
So
left me no choice.
I know I predicted the Seahawks to win. I am concerned about a couple things. One benefit is we are playing a 1 o'clock Pacific game, which is great because no 10 a.m. games this year, which is awesome. But to crack back 80's point, they have to start fast. That's one of the benefits they had in this Sunday night game against the Eagles is they started fast. They scored on 2 of their first 3 drives. That was huge. They were the first team to score an offensive touchdown against the Eagles in the first quarter all year. They need to score quick. They need to take an edge. They can't rely on field goals. If they can get a 7 or 10 point lead like they did against the Eagles, they're going to blow the Jags out of the water because their offense is just not good enough. And if you take away their best weapon in Leonard Fournette, I think it makes them just a terrible team. I'm going to predict a low-scoring game. I'm going to say something like 14-7. I don't think their offense is good enough. I mean, maybe their defense comes up with a score, but I'm going to say it's a low-scoring game. If we get that first touchdown in the first quarter, I think we're going to run away with it. I'm going to say 14-10.
I'll take it.
Crackback 80 says 27-20 Hawks, so glad that we're all in consensus.
I thought 27-20, but then I thought I don't think they're going to score 20 against us.
Yeah. That's kind of the expectation. If Seahawks score 20, then the game is theirs. But we'll see if they can get there.
What if it's a shootout like the Houston game?
Oh, that would be my heart would go crazy. But that actually leads to this point. Blake Bortles throws more interceptions or touchdowns this game.
Interceptions, 2 to 1.
2 to 1.
I'm gonna say 1 of each. You call it even.
You're gonna push. I'm gonna say he is gonna throw more interceptions because I think they're gonna get desperate because we're gonna shut down their run, and he's gonna go 3 interceptions, and they might get a touchdown on the ground. So 3 interceptions to 0 touchdowns.
Will Griffin get his first?
I hope so, man. He was close a couple times. But I think that's one thing about his game that I'd really like for him to develop. If Shaquille Griffin could get more interceptions, because he's played amazing this year. He did make a mistake. He forgets that it's not college, and he has to tackle a guy after a catch if they're on the ground.
Yeah, he does that.
It happened twice this year, I think. But rookie mistake. All right, we're gonna do a little rushing here. So Seahawks rushing. Seahawks defensive rushing over under 100 yards. Are the Jags going to get over 100 yards? Oh, no, I'm sorry. The Seahawks defense rushing over under 100 yards. Over the past 5 games, they've limited rushing offenses to 71.2 yards.
Well under.
Yeah, under.
Well under.
I'm gonna say under as well. Yeah, because if you look at this year, they've turned it on in regards to that rushing defense. On the flip side, Seahawks offensive rushing over under 100 yards. I'm actually not going to give you the past 5 games. I'm just going to see what you guys say over under.
Well, I'm going to say we're under. I think we've been just over 100 lately, but no, I don't think it's going to happen.
All right.
Under.
All right. So the Seahawks have been averaging 110 yards their last 5 games. I'm going to say they're going to go over. I think this is a game where Russell Wilson's going to be running for his life a little bit. He might get like 40 yards. Mike Davis going to get his 40 yards. I think they have a good chance to get over 100 yards. And our last prediction is tight end Techno Thursday going to continue? Yes or no?
I hope not. I want something new.
It certainly will.
It's the worst prediction, Ross.
That's with us for the entire season, guaranteed.
Yes, Techno Thursday is going to continue because if it's not Jimmy Graham, it's going to be Nick Vannett or it's going to be Luke Wilson. It's the dorkiest touchdown celebration, but it's like perfectly Seahawks. It's perfectly the tight ends. It's perfectly Russell Wilson. So my guess is that.
Yep, I'm with it.
All right. And gentlemen, that's our show. So final thoughts about this game, about the Seahawks.
We got to win. That's it, right? We gotta run the table pretty much. I don't want none of this backing into the playoffs or getting lucky and the Rams falling apart on us. I want to win these games, and I want to go to the playoffs on a streak with some confidence. And because this is going to be a bloodbath this year. This NFC playoffs are going to be crazy. And I want to make sure that the guys are up for it. So let's do it.
Yeah, a couple of games left. I don't want to get into the prognostication quite yet when it comes to playoff seeding, but yeah, we're getting close, and each of these games are so important. Ross, final thoughts?
Go Hawks. No, seriously, let's make the Jaguars look like how they usually look.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really, really want to beat down.
That would be perfect.
Just like really, really kind of. I mean, like we didn't completely 100% dominate the Eagles, but I think we made them look really normal, really average. And if we do it again this week against the Jaguars, then we do it next week against the Rams, and then we know we're onto something.
True, I agree. Gentlemen, shout-outs.
Check out the Triple B podcast when you get a chance. I guarantee you that you might like it.
Keep your eyes peeled out. There's a good movie coming out next week, I hear.
Yes, there's this little movie called Star Wars. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but people seem pretty jazzed.
Yeah, Mark Hamill's in Tokyo this week. Just so you know.
But yeah, we are the Seahawks Fan Table Podcast. I'm Sam. They are Ross and Zeb. Thank you so much to JG and Crackback for checking us out live. Gentlemen, we enjoyed. If you are guys, I know JG is. Check us out on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast, at Facebook at Seahawks Fan Table. Check our forum out at hawkscast.com. And go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.